Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Porta. I'm a Director of Solution Consulting at ServiceNow, and I'm excited to be here to present to you this episode of Cutting Chai. For those that are not familiar with Cutting Chai, this is a series of 20-minute conversations that we're having with leaders across India, across various industries. Obviously, we're in very challenging and different times, and this is a great opportunity to hear a little bit more from some great leaders into their insights into how they're coping in the current environment, what they're doing with their teams, and just learn a little bit more about them as individuals as well. And today, I'm really, really excited to have with me and to introduce Mr. Sanjeev Prasad, who is the EVP and Global Business Head for APAC in India of Coforge. Sanjeev, I've given a quick intro, but why don't you give yourself a quick introduction to the audience?
Thank you, Matt. Great to be here and to be part of the Chai conversation. I'm the head of APAC in India for Coforge. Past life, I've been through a long 30-year journey with used to be the global CIO for Genpact, heading all of digital and the CIO function for Sutherland. And the first 10 years, spent a lot of time in the Valley. Working for some of the icons of that time, right? And some of the icons of that time don't exist anymore. They probably merged or been acquired somewhere along the way. And in the middle, I ran my own company as well for about 10, 12 years. We went public as well. That was in India. That's briefly about me, Matt.
Sanjeev, thanks for that great intro. And we'll get a little bit more into your background shortly, because I know you've got a great story to tell. But before we go there, tell everyone a little bit about how you're going. I'm interested in you personally, working from home, managing a team remotely, how that's been, and how you found things.
And when lockdown hit, we were obviously not so sure how everything's going to play out, how things are going to work. We were, of course, using Teams and Zooms already, but not at the level which we had to finally. But surprisingly, because of the quality of the technology and the way it is advanced, that we could actually do everything we wanted to do. In fact, we could have more meetings, we could discuss more, we could spend more time with the customers. In a lot of ways, I think we took to this entire virtual environment like fish takes to water. So it has really, from that angle, worked out well. I think it made us a lot more productive. Obviously, you cannot replace that physical connect. You still need to meet your clients, but it is truly coming close to being, physically present together. I'm sure you can see my expressions right now as much as you would see if you were in the same room together. In fact, probably more, because it's so focused in just between the two of us. So I think it really, from that angle, from a professional perspective, it did work out. Of course, there were challenges. People are working remotely, whether their internet connections were not there, etc. So there were challenges of that nature. But overall, if I must say that, I think it really, really worked out. Given the situation we were in, it really worked out well. At a personal level, as I said, we were all locked down. Luckily, my daughter was coming back from the US for a visit, and she was here. And so I'm glad she just came before the lockdown, and my younger one was already here. So as a family, we actually got a chance to spend a year together, which we probably would never have spent. And we had to live with each other, figure out, and obviously our daughters have all grown up. So a lot of learnings there for us and for them, and to just learn to be together for nearly a year. So I think in a lot of ways, I counted it as a blessing this last 1 year. From a work perspective, yeah, we hired a lot of people even remotely. I never met them physically for a long time. And finally, you met them when you were, when the lockdown kind of lifted, you went and met them, and they came over in some cases. They were in different cities, you couldn't. So it has been challenging, no two ways about it. But I think we've adapted, and, I think maybe that's the human nature.
Yeah, I think you're right. Adaptation. It's amazing how well everybody has adapted, right, to the last 12 to 18 months. And, to your point, the way we've taken on board technology so quickly and made changes as far as the way we work goes is quite incredible. And I'm with you around the working from home. I think it's been a blessing. I've got 2 young daughters though, so my experience might have been a little bit different to yours, but anyway. So I want to move on a little bit and just, you touched on your career, but it's quite an interesting journey you've been on. Can you talk a little bit about that, where you've come from, where you started, to what's brought you to where you are now? You've had a lot of different roles.
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting journey, and I don't regret a minute of it. I think in a lot of ways, been very fortunate that I got into the technology space when I did, and it's kept me relevant till today, and maybe kept me young till today. So I will start by saying that the journey started. Obviously, I'm a manufacturing person, industrial engineering, mechanical engineering, and computers had just started coming into India at that time. It was really not. In fact, I think we had a PDP 11 in college or something, if I remember. And maybe I written one program, maybe not even one program. Actually, I didn't do any programming in India in my bachelor's. Um, but when I went to the US, I was in Texas. And when I graduated, I was looking for a manufacturing job. Really, I wanted to work for the semiconductor industry. That's really what the focus was at that time. So I moved to the Valley, and lo and behold, it was tough time for the semiconductor industry because they were into memory chips at that time. And if you look at 85, the entire, the CPU, boom had not yet started. The desktop booms had not yet started at that time. So if you talk to a AMD or a National Semiconductor or Intel, I mean, they were getting their butts kicked by the Japanese competition. You can edit that if it doesn't work for you. But and so it just so happened that I got the chance to work in a startup, in a healthcare startup. I did everything. I mean, it was that was the opportunity of a lifetime. I truly believe that because it just made me who I am. And it was in the Valley. I was developing the product. I was demonstrating the product. I was meeting clients. Everything you can think of. And in fact, even when the network started coming up, I in fact laid the cable myself, set it up myself, right? So you got your hands dirty with practically anything and everything in the initial stages of your career. And I think that set me, on this whole being an entrepreneur, being able to take risks, and all of those actually became part of my DNA. And if you look at the way the world is today, it's constantly changing. And your ability to adapt, be in new environments, be an entrepreneur one day, be part of a corporate team and another day, work with younger people, report to younger people, work with different folks, right? It becomes part of you. I mean, I've had global teams, right? I've had teams from South America to Japan to Australia and everything in between from Eastern Europe. And the reason one could do all this is because one becomes agile, and I'm sure a lot of the folks in the tech industry are doing it today. But it just makes you, as you make these choices, it just makes you agile. It makes you more entrepreneurial. Its ability to take risks, and just go do what you have to do. I mean, I just do what I have to do. I don't worry about anybody else, and anybody else has something to say about it. I just like being part of these kind of growth organizations that keep doing what I need to do. So I hope that gives you an idea of where that journey has been.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think your point around kind of continually reinventing yourself to keep up is interesting, and it's why you're at the forefront still of what you're doing, what you're doing. And you mentioned, I think in the last question that we asked around companies that just aren't around anymore, right? Because they haven't gone through that same process you've gone through personally, right? You've continually adapted and evolved, and I think that entrepreneur type mindset as well. I'm interested, based on that, back to when you were a kid, is what did you want to do? I'm assuming that you weren't sitting here as a kid thinking you'd be where you are now. So what were your goals and aspirations?
As I said, in India, in our time, there were probably three professions which were there, right? One was engineering, one was being a doctor, another was being in the government. Really, that were the three opportunities. There really didn't exist anything else. And you could not even think, because if you wanted to make a living, there were the three existed. You could not think of doing something different. There are so many different jobs today, right? Which you couldn't even dream of. So I think our dreams were fairly limited by that means. One thing was there in the mind that, okay, by the time we were in college, okay, we need to go abroad, right? So we need to go to study in the US. So that was the big thing. The other thing was because India was such to be independent. And I still remember from my first thing was, I want to be part of marine engineering or do, go be a shippy, because I think that'll take you across the world. Right. So, I mean, those are the things you're thinking of. And as I grew along, my father became an entrepreneur. He's an engineer himself. So I know that, sometime in your mind, you got to have, you got these, I would say, walls, or you don't even know about it, right? Then when you saw your father becoming an entrepreneur, being an engineer, then you say, oh, okay, that's a vista which is opened up for you. So when I did come back to India from the US in 93, 94, I did end up starting a company because I didn't have to go through a mental battle to start a company that I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I know, okay, it's something to be done, and you could try it out, right? You could get into it. So I mean, that's what it was. I mean, the vision was not there. In fact, I often tell people today when I meet people, and in any organization, and people who work with me, I always like to build leaders. I always like to have people who, hopefully they can vision for themselves. A lot of people don't know. They just keep moving towards life, and one opportunity comes with another, and then just keep taking it. They grow. Some of them are very successful. But if you really knew what you could be, and you knew you had the potential, you could really, you can achieve your goals. So oftentimes I have had this, and some people have left me and gone on to bigger things. But I really don't have a problem with that, because I think, people come from very diverse background. They may not have had the opportunity which I may have had because of my schooling, etc. And sometimes, being able to help them vision, actually help them succeed.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful, the way, you've empowered those around you as well to try and think similar, right? And to grow as individuals. And that's an important point, right? For people to move on, to follow their dreams and aspirations. As a leader, that's not a bad thing to have happen, right? That's I think it's exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. No regrets. Absolutely. I love it that, the people who've been with me on the journey, if they're successful and they've done well, and it's fantastic. It's good to see from a distance what folks are achieving, right? And this has been such an opportunity, right? I mean, this whole tech boom and the way the world has changed, it has given so many people opportunities. I've seen people's lives change. People came from very humble backgrounds. Their father couldn't afford to buy a house. And in mid-90s, I can tell you, this young project manager whom I had, and his father was retiring. He had not bought a house yet. And he was 30, 32, whatever, 33. And loans were available. India had, of course, even the financial, in a way, revolution had happened with the entire deregulation of the industry, that he could get a loan, and he was getting a decent salary, and he could buy a home. So the tech world has really helped transform people's lives in so many ways. The one is obviously building more leaders. Second is obviously the kind of opportunities they've had, and to better their living.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky. We're both in the tech industry, and very lucky with where we're at. And I think it's provided, it's afforded me some opportunities in my career as well as it has you. So as well as others around us. I want to shift gears a little bit back to, we mentioned at the beginning around challenging times, and obviously COVID in the last 12 to 18 months and how that's affected everybody. I wanted to kind of focus in a little bit on you and your team and your organization, and how you've structured yourselves. Obviously, in India especially, there's been a wave of COVID go through, there's potentially speculation of a third wave. How do you set up and align your teams? How do you support them, during this? You mentioned some of the basics around working from home, et cetera, but there's a whole lot more to it than that, right?
So I think, we obviously, as I was, as soon as COVID hit, we were in APAC, we were the first to be impacted, because my customers are in China, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, or Australia. And we could see the impact coming in. The first things was about employee safety for us. We made sure that whatever help they required in terms of care, in terms of, in the beginning stages, even simple things like masks was not available in China. Sanitizers were not available. We actually were shipping stuff out because nobody had anticipated the demand the way it would come, right? So we just wanted to make sure that and even if it's available, it was not available in a distributed way. The distribution system was not there. So we need to make sure that our employees get it, because the first thing was to keep them safe. And obviously, as it progressed, the work from home worked out very well for us. We were very much on top of it. We were actually proactively. People anyway had desktop, but a lot of people had laptops already. But we got the necessary laptops way ahead of time. So I must say that we were I think as efficient as you could be working from home. In fact, even more efficient. We were taking dipstick from some of our clients, and they said, "You guys, your productivity has gone up." So I think from that way, it actually worked out well. And the first wave was obviously, as soon as you went to lockdown mode, you were able to control the spread of the disease. So people did not get affected as much. But as it went on, the second wave was actually obviously very tough. And obviously it impacted family members. It was coming from all over, and it was very virulent. But we stepped up. We have, of course, supported them with whatever help we through our, making sure they could get hospitals, making sure they could get the beds, oxygen, as well as making sure that we went forward, and you would have seen it in the social media that we've got ICU beds now set up for our employees and our and their families, because this one is not just about employees. Because your families get impacted, it just impacts the whole ecosystem. So you need to take care of it. So keeping the employee first and employee health and safety as the primary objective, I think we've gone ahead and done a number of things. And in supporting the people who get impacted by it, if somebody does, succumb to COVID, how do you support their families, making sure they get, salaries, making sure we can get their families jobs, right, in the company. There are a number of initiatives which we've actually done to make sure that we are able to support the families. This is the time to do it. It is a tough environment. Hopefully now, but let's see what happens to the third wave, right? But the first step we are doing is making sure that everybody is vaccinated. And we are actually very systematically making sure that all our folks are vaccinated. So that when the third wave does come in, we are better prepared. People are vaccinated. That seems to be the best protection out there. So really, that's what we've been doing. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. And look, well done to you and your organization. That's obviously going the extra mile in the environment you're in, to make sure not only your employees, but their families, et cetera, are taken care of. As you said, I think it's a wider ecosystem. So well done to you for your efforts. Excellent. Sanjeev, you touched on your career a little bit at the beginning there. I'm interested to drill into that a bit more because we've spoken previously, and I know you've got a couple of great stories, but also just your journey in general. Can you share with everybody about how you've ended up where you are today?
Yeah. So as I mentioned that, I started with a healthcare startup in the Valley, and I got to do everything, right, from developing code to meeting clients to being on the Las Vegas floor, setting and being in the hospitality suite, developing the software and showing it, and all kinds of stuff, right? And that was the beginning of the journey. It so happened because I was working in some of the latest stuff there, in what I would call workflow then, PLM, product lifecycle management, in the late 80s. That very early in the journey, right? And it was all based on, we're trying to bring in client server technology using Sun OS, etc. And eventually, what happened was that I came back to India and started my own company. And it was all based in client server. I know we were probably the first ones to start off with that. The first partner of Power Builder, which was the first tool practically in this whole area. And in fact, I remember another story in that is I remember meeting somebody who was very senior in the industry who had his own company. And I went to him and I said, should start looking at this and desktops, etc., and, client server. And there were a bunch of, I think there were maybe 200 VT220 terminals and people working on it. And the person said, Sanjeev, do you think we can be able to change all of this, right? And lo and behold, 1 year later, everything became, right, distributed computing. People had desktops. Everybody had a desktop instead of VT220, VT100, right? So that was one. And then as they went along, I still remember when Lotus started operations, we went to them. I said, because I had worked on workflow, I said, I want to bring this to the industry. He said, take it, Sanjeev. There's nobody else talking about it. So, you can see that as technology emerged, we were really at the forefront in a lot of ways. And that's how the company started. And as I look back, look forward in my life, we had a cloud first strategy in 2010 in Genpact. And we moved a lot of stuff to the cloud. And the interesting thing for me was that as we were making these choices, obviously, companies like your ServiceNow and others, everybody's interested because they see somebody who's investing, who's looking at new ways of doing things. And I got a call. I still remember Satya Nadella reached out to me, and I had a 45-minute session I still remember on the day of the Delhi election. And it was very interesting. He gave me ideas, and then believe me, within half an hour after that, I had a bunch of YouTube videos and other suggestions on how to make things work, right? So that was the response I got from him. And because, by the way, because I was in the cloud journey as well, I got a chance to meet, we were looking at Google in a big way, and I got a chance to meet Eric Schmidt. And so that was another one. So because of this, I had a chance to meet a lot of leaders, and to have conversations. And these people are becoming icons, and as you know, they will be written in history books, 50 years from now and 100 years from now. And I've had a chance to meet even Larry Ellison and Mark Hurd along the way, and have had interesting conversations. So very fortunate to be part of the journey and lead this, as this technology has changed, be part of it and still being relevant today, right? I'm still leading, and now I'm trying to do it for my customers because I've been on the other shoe, right? So my thought always has been that you learn internally in IT a lot, right? And now if somebody, when I go and talk to, I can understand the CIO's problem in every aspect, whether it's having a seat at the table, whether it's being able to manage a cost reduction, whether it's to transform. And, we used to have this whole thing about ROIs, right? CIOs. ROIs are out of the door. Prioritize is out of the door because there's just so much to be done. And there's so intense competition that you got to do it. So having that lens puts me in a better position to be able to look at my clients and help them through this journey. So a lot of fun, do a lot of new stuff along the way. I would say never a dull day. Every innovation has been actually embedded in, even when we are providing services, has been part of the journey which I've been on in some way or the other.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, an amazing journey you've been on. And I think I want to change gears a little bit in the last couple of minutes we've got left together and go back to you as a person. And I think back to lockdown and all being at home and what we've gotten up to. People have found new hobbies, and people start baking, people buy dogs, all sorts of stuff. I'm interested in you, like what keeps you occupied? What are your hobbies? What do you keep interested with?
No, so as I said, right, spending time with the family was the number one thing. A lot of movies together, a lot of other activities, playing games, etc. is going on. We got a dog. So that, the dog is obviously, I'm just sitting home seeing the pigeon sitting out there. And when she sees me and she sees the pigeon, so she knows that she has to go after the pigeon. So there is some activity on the dog all the time. It's a young dog and puppy, more than a puppy now. So very much, takes, it's a great pleasure to have her around and just play with her, so it works out. And I play golf. So the weekend, when the lockdown did lift, I was playing golf probably every Sunday. And of course, this one was tough. So we were again in lockdown, but I hope to continue to do that. Apart from that, I just love to travel when they have the opportunity, hike. Like even in the US, we were there recently. And we went up to one of the national parks and hiked. And prior to that, we were in Patagonia. So we enjoy doing that. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, you've made me jealous with some of the hiking locations, that's for sure. And hopefully, next time you get back out to Australia, you can enjoy some of the great hiking we've got here as well. So
yeah, in fact, Australia is part of my, is part of my territory, right? I've got teams there, and I was able to make it once there, and then COVID hit. So I'm just waiting to get back there. We have a significant size team there.
Yeah, we'll get you back soon. Look, and just to wrap things up, that touched a little bit on it there with what you do around golf, etc. But what else do you do? Any advice for people listening around work-life balance? How you mentally take a break and switch off. I think you're obviously very busy. You've got a big role, and I've heard a lot of people struggle with that balance, especially with working from home, etc. So what are your ways of kind of having that balance between the two?
It's a struggle. Let's put it this way. It's a struggle always. It's not easy to say. I wish I could say I'm very systematic about it, have it compartmentalized, and I'm able to do it. But we try. We try because we're at home. And in fact, the work from home actually has worked in that way, that you've been able to spend more time with the family, even while you're working. Because see, when you're in the office, even if you take a break, obviously you're working with folks and you go out and meet somebody else, have a coffee, right? Of course, that part has been affected, but at home, at least you're there. So if you're taking a break, you can say hi to your family, right? And spend a little bit more time. It is not simple, but I think one must. I wish I could say that, I wish I could say that I was the proponent and I would stand as an example of work-life balance. No, I'm not. But having said that, if I believe, having worked for so many years, if you're able to put in those consistent, efficient time during your work times, right? I know, all of us work in different time zones these days, so that does preclude you from, allocating time easily. But if you are able to put in those 9 hours, 8 hours, or 10 hours, or whatever it is, right, of efficient time, I think you can make that balance. And I think it's also making sure that the time you do spend with your family is intentional. That means that it is not just, okay, I come and go, right? Spend that intentional time with your family so that you really make it work. That's the only thing I can say. And I'm still learning, by the way. These are all part of the process of learning, of growing, especially in a family environment. It never ends.
Yeah, some good advice in there. And look, I think we could talk for another hour, and I'd love to pick your brain a little bit more. We've run short on time, so we'll end it there. But I really want to thank you for your time. It's been a real pleasure for me to speak to you. I've definitely picked up some tips and advice just from our conversation today as well, and appreciate it. So, Sanjeev, thank you for your time. Everybody, thank you for listening into this episode of Cutting Chai. I hope you've really enjoyed and got some great ideas from Sanjeev as well. Sanjeev, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure.